Admiral Grace Williams watched the chaos unfold through the view screen of the UES Defiance. The Coalition fleet that had come to destroy Earth was falling apart before her eyes. Ships drifted aimlessly through space as their crews struggled with concepts they had never experienced before. Individual thought, personal choice, the freedom to disagree with authority. "Admiral," reported Commander Steve Martinez from the communication station, "we're receiving over 300 separate transmission requests from the Coalition fleet. It seems like every ship wants to talk to us individually." Grace nodded. She had expected this. Dr. Rodriguez's biological weapons had worked exactly as planned, but the results were more dramatic than anyone had imagined. Entire species were experiencing identity crises on a galactic scale. "Put them through one at a time," Grace ordered. "Start with the Klaxon vessels." The first transmission came from a Klaxon ship commander who identified himself as KLX Prime. His voice still had the clicking, buzzing quality of his species, but there was something new in it. Uncertainty, curiosity, fear. "Human Admiral," KLX Prime said, "something has happened to my people. We are separate now. Each of us thinks different thoughts, wants different things. Is this what you call individual consciousness?" "Yes," Grace replied gently. "It's what every human experiences from birth. The ability to make your own choices, to have your own opinions, to be yourself rather than part of a collective." There was a long pause before KLX Prime spoke again. "It is terrifying and wonderful at the same time. I find that I have preferences about things I never noticed before. The color of starlight through my ship's hull, the sound of my engines. I want to see places I have never been, not because the collective needs me there, but because I am curious." Similar conversations were taking place across the fleet. Voidborn commanders spoke of experiencing physical sensation for the first time in millennia, marveling at the feeling of their ships' hulls around them. Forgeborn crews debated among themselves about whether efficiency was really more important than beauty. But not every species was adapting well to the changes. A transmission came in from a Zephyrian vessel, Admiral Kethvar's voice filled with rage and frustration. "Human witch," Kethvar snarled. "What have you done to our allies? The Klaxons ignore our orders. The Voidborn cannot maintain formation. The Forgeborn have started painting pictures on their hull plating instead of focusing on their missions." Grace smiled. "We've given them a choice, Admiral. The same choice we offered the Galactic Council months ago. They can cooperate with us as equals, or they can try to dominate us and face the consequences." "This is biological warfare," Kethvar accused. "You have poisoned entire species with your primitive concept of individualism." "We've liberated them," Grace corrected. "Look at your own allies, Admiral. Are they suffering? Are they dying? Or are they discovering parts of themselves they never knew existed?" As if to prove her point, a Klaxon voice cut into the transmission. It was KLX Prime again, but this time he was addressing Kethvar directly. "Admiral Kethvar," the Klaxon said, "I have been thinking about this mission. Why are we here? Why do we want to destroy the humans? They have not attacked our worlds. They have not enslaved our people. They have only refused to submit to the Council's authority. They are a disease." Kethvar replied automatically. "They spread chaos wherever they go." "But is chaos always bad?" asked another voice, this one from a Voidborn ship. "I have been experiencing physical sensation for only a few hours, but already I find it fascinating. The texture of my ship's controls, the vibration of the engines, the way light reflects off surfaces. Why did we give this up?" More voices joined the conversation as individual members of different species began talking to each other for the first time as individuals rather than as representatives of collective entities. The communication channels filled with questions, debates, and discoveries as beings that had known only conformity began to explore the concept of diversity. Grace opened a general communication channel to address the entire Coalition fleet. "To all ships and crews of the Coalition forces, this is Admiral Grace Williams. I want you to know that what has happened to you was not an attack. It was an offer of freedom." She paused, looking out at the hundreds of alien vessels drifting in space around Earth. "For thousands of years, your species have been told that individual thought leads to chaos. that personal freedom results in conflict, that diversity weakens rather than strengthens civilizations. But look around you. Yes, you are experiencing confusion right now, but you are also experiencing wonder, curiosity, and the joy of discovering who you are as individuals. A new voice joined the conversation, mechanical and precise. It was from a Forge-born vessel, but the speaker had modified its voice synthesizer to include tonal variations that suggested emotion. "Human Admiral," the Forge-born said. "My name is... I do not have a name. We have never needed individual identifiers, but I would like to choose one. Is this normal?" "Very normal," Grace replied warmly. "Choosing your own name is one of the first acts of individual identity. What would you like to be called?" "I have been analyzing the vibrations my ship makes as it moves through space. They form patterns that I find beautiful. I would like to be called Harmony." Grace felt tears forming in her eyes. Around her, the bridge crew of the Defiance listened in amazement as an artificial being chose its first name and discovered the concept of beauty. The conversations continued for hours. Individual members of different species began forming friendships across racial lines, bonding over shared experiences of discovering individual consciousness. Some ships requested permission to dock with human vessels so their crews could learn more about individual freedom and personal choice. But not everyone was happy with the changes. Admiral Kethavar and several other Zephyrian commanders maintained their original mission parameters. They withdrew from the main fleet and regrouped at the edge of the solar system. "Admiral Williams," Kethavar broadcast, "you may have corrupted our allies with your biological weapons, but the Zephyrian hegemony remains pure. We will complete our mission and destroy your homeworld." Grace sighed. She had hoped all the coalition species would embrace their new freedom, but she knew some would resist change. "Admiral Kethavar, you're welcome to try, but I should warn you that the galaxy has changed in the last few hours. You might want to check your communications from home before you do something you'll regret." Kethavar activated his long-range communicators to contact the Zephyrian homeworld. The response shocked him. The planet was in chaos as individual Zephyrians began questioning the rigid hierarchies that had governed their society for millennia. Young Zephyrians were forming artistic communities, creating music and poetry that had been forbidden under the collective aesthetic codes. Workers were refusing assignments that didn't interest them, choosing instead to pursue personal passions. The Zephyrian government was fragmenting as individual officials began acting on personal conscience rather than institutional loyalty. Some provinces had declared independence. Others had opened diplomatic relations with human colonies. "Impossible," Kethavar whispered. "The virus wasn't limited to the species we directly targeted," Grace explained. "Individual consciousness is contagious, Admiral. Once beings see that they have choices, they start making them. The old order of the galaxy is over." Over the following days, more ships broke away from Kethavar's remaining force. Individual Zephyrian commanders began making their own decisions about whether destroying Earth was really worth doing. Some requested asylum on human worlds. Others asked for transportation back to their homeworlds to help with the transition to individual consciousness. Within a week, Kethavar found himself commanding only a handful of ships, crewed by the most rigid traditionalists of his species. The Great Coalition fleet had dissolved into hundreds of individual vessels, whose crews were more interested in exploring their new freedom than in destroying anybody. Grace Williams stood in the diplomatic reception center of Luna Station 6, months later, greeting ambassadors from over 100 different worlds. The newly formed Free Species Alliance was holding its first General Assembly, with representatives from civilizations that had never before been allowed to govern themselves. KLX Prime, who now called himself Marcus, in honor of a human philosopher, whose writings on individual liberty had fascinated him, served as the Klaxon representative. Harmony had become the spokesperson for a group of Forge-born who had discovered artistic expression. A Void-born named Whisper had learned to manifest permanently in normal space and was studying human poetry. The Galactic Council still existed, but its authority had collapsed as member species embraced individual freedom over collective control. Some council worlds had joined the Free Species Alliance. Others had withdrawn from galactic affairs entirely to focus on internal transformations. Admiral Kethvar made one final attempt to restore the old order, leading a small fleet of traditionalist vessels in an attack on the human colony of New Geneva. The attack was repelled not by human forces but by a mixed fleet of former coalition ships whose crews had chosen to defend the principles of freedom and individual choice. Lieutenant Colonel Sam Parker crouched in the organic tunnel, his breathing mask filtering out the toxic spores that filled the air of Nest Prime. The Klaxon homeworld was like nothing he had ever seen, a planet-sized organism that pulsed with alien life. The walls around him were not built but grown, formed from some kind of living material that glowed with bioluminescent patterns. Behind Sam crawled three of Earth's best specialists. Tony Garcia, their communications expert, carried equipment that could hack into quantum networks. Lucy Chen, demolitions officer, had explosives designed to work against organic targets. Matt Thompson, xenotech specialist, understood alien biology better than anyone except Dr. Rodriguez herself. They had been crawling through these tunnels for 3 weeks, moving slowly toward the central nexus that controlled the Klaxon hive mind. The planet was home to over 1 billion individual Klaxons, but they all shared one collective consciousness. Destroy the nexus, and the entire species would collapse into chaos. But Sam's team wasn't here to destroy anything. They were here to liberate. "Contact ahead," whispered Tony, pointing to where the tunnel opened into a larger chamber. Through the gap, they could see Klaxon drones moving back and forth, their insect-like bodies clicking against the organic floor. The creatures paid no attention to each other, moving with the perfect coordination of a hive mind. Sam checked his chronometer. Similar teams were infiltrating 5 other homeworlds at this exact moment. Captain Jane Foster was leading the mission to the Voidborn realm. Lieutenant Paul Mitchell was targeting the Forgeborn manufacturing worlds. The timing had to be perfect. The team moved through the chamber like ghosts, using stealth technology that bent light around their bodies. The Klaxon drones walked right past them, unable to see the humans who crouched just meters away. 3 days later, they reached their target. The central nexus was a massive organic computer the size of a city, its surface covered with neural pathways that pulsed with electrical activity. This was the brain of the Klaxon species, the central processor that connected every individual on the planet into one collective consciousness. Sam had studied the intelligence reports for months. The Klaxons had evolved this way naturally, losing individual identity in favor of perfect cooperation. For thousands of years, they had been the galaxy's most efficient species, able to coordinate planet-wide activities with perfect precision. But efficiency came at a cost. The Klaxons had no art, no music, no literature. They had no dreams or ambitions beyond the needs of the collective. They were perfect workers but had stopped being individuals so long ago that they had forgotten what individual thought felt like. "Remember," Sam whispered to his team as they prepared the virus payload, "we're not trying to hurt them. We're trying to give them something they've never had." The virus Dr. Rodriguez had designed was elegant in its simplicity. Instead of attacking Klaxon biology, it introduced new neural pathways that would allow individual thought to exist alongside collective consciousness. The Klaxons would retain their ability to work together, but they would also develop personal opinions, desires, and dreams. Lucy placed the viral containers at key points around the nexus, while Tony hacked into the quantum communication networks. The virus needed to spread through the entire planetary consciousness within minutes, before the collective could recognize the threat and defend against it. "Ready," Tony reported. All systems synchronized with the other teams. Sam activated his communicator, knowing that the signal would take hours to reach Earth but that the other teams would receive it instantly through quantum relays. "Ghost protocol is go. Execute in 3, 2, 1 mark." The virus released into the central nexus like invisible fire. Within seconds, it was racing through every neural pathway, every quantum connection that linked the billion Klaxons into one mind. The effect was immediate and profound. For the first time in millennia, individual Klaxons began to have their own thoughts. Worker drone KLX-7742 was carrying nutritional paste to the larval chambers when the change hit. Suddenly, the constant background whisper of the collective consciousness was joined by something new. A voice that was his own, separate from the hive. He stopped walking. The concept of stopping, for any reason other than collective necessity, was so alien that it took several seconds for his mind to process what was happening. He was thinking. Not we thinking or collective thinking, but I thinking. For the first time in his existence, KLX-7742 looked around and saw the world through his own eyes rather than through the collective sensory network. The tunnels looked different. The other drones looked different. He realized with a shock that he had preferences, opinions about what he was seeing. The nutritional paste he was carrying smelled terrible. How had he never noticed that before? Similar awakenings were happening across the planet. In the nursery chambers, worker drones began to notice that some larvae were more active than others, more interesting than others. In the mining tunnels, workers started to question whether there might be more efficient ways to extract minerals. In the leadership chambers, the crisis was immediate and catastrophic. The Klaxon Queens, who had coordinated global activities through perfect mental synchronization, suddenly found themselves dealing with a billion different voices all asking questions at the same time. Why do we work 18 hours per day? Why can't we have personal possessions? Why don't we have names? Why can't we choose our own jobs? Why can't we make art? The collective consciousness that had made the Klaxon so powerful began to fragment as individuals started making their own decisions. Some workers abandoned their posts to explore parts of the planet they had never seen. Others began experimenting with decorating their living spaces. A few started trying to communicate with members of other species, curious about what individual consciousness might be like for creatures that had always been separate. Across the galaxy, similar transformations were taking place on 5 other worlds. The Voidborn, forced fully into normal space by technology that disrupted their subspace existence, were experiencing physical sensation for the first time in eons. The Forgeborn discovered that their mechanical bodies could be modified for personal expression rather than just efficiency. On Earth, Dr. Rodriguez monitored the results through quantum communicators. The reports coming in from the infiltration teams were beyond her wildest expectations. Not only were the viruses working, but they were working better than planned. "General Patterson," she called to the military commander who was coordinating Earth's defenses. "The Ghost Protocol is succeeding. Coalition fleet movements are becoming erratic. Their coordination is breaking down." Chris Patterson looked at the tactical displays showing the massive alien fleet approaching Earth. 2,000 ships had been reduced to about 1,500 as vessels broke away to return to their homeworlds. Emergency communications were flooding through space as species tried to understand what was happening to their people. "How long before they reach us?" Chris asked. 12 hours. Reported Admiral Grace Williams from the command ship UES Defiance. "But General, something's happening to their formation. Ships are breaking off, changing course. It's like they can't decide what they want to do." The reason became clear over the next few hours. The Coalition fleet had been coordinated through the collective consciousness of the Klaxons, the advanced calculations of the Forgeborn, and the strategic planning of the Voidborn. With those species experiencing fundamental changes to their consciousness, the fleet's command structure was falling apart. Klaxon ships began receiving contradictory orders as individual commanders started disagreeing with collective decisions. Voidborn vessels flickered in and out of normal space as their crews struggled with unfamiliar physical limitations. Forgeborn ships modified themselves mid-flight as their crews discovered the concept of personal preference. By the time the Coalition fleet reached Earth's outer defenses, it was no longer a coordinated military force. It was a collection of confused, frightened, and curious alien crews who were experiencing individual consciousness for the first time in their species' history. Admiral Grace Williams stood on the bridge of the Defiance, watching the alien fleet approach in complete disarray. Ships were flying in random directions, some stopping dead in space while their crews tried to figure out what they wanted to do next. "Open communications," Grace ordered. "All channels, all frequencies." When the communication link activated, she could hear the chaos. klaxon voices clicking in confusion as individuals tried to coordinate without a collective consciousness. Void-born whispers as they marveled at their new ability to feel physical sensations. Forge-born mechanical voices arguing with each other about the best way to approach the situation. "To all coalition forces," Grace announced. "This is Admiral Williams of the United Earth Space Command. We need to talk." The dead world of Terminus hung in space like a burned coal, its surface scarred by ancient wars and forgotten disasters. No life had walked on its surface for 1,000,000 years, which made it the perfect place for secret meetings that could reshape the galaxy. Deep beneath the planet's crust, in caverns that had once been cities, representatives from 6 different species gathered around a table made from compressed stellar matter. The air was thick with tension, and the strange mix of atmospheric gases needed to keep everyone breathing. Hive Mind Zuck spoke for the Klaxon Collective, its voice a harmony of clicking mandibles and buzzing wings that somehow formed words. The creature was larger than the others at the table, its insect-like body gleaming black in the artificial light. "The human infection spreads," Zitek said. 57 more worlds have declared independence from Council oversight. They cite humanity's victory over the Zephyrian fleet as proof that the Council's protection is no longer needed. Across the table, a void-born representative flickered between visible and invisible, its form never quite solid. When it spoke, its voice seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. "The balance is broken," the void-born said. "For 10,000 years, species have known their place. Expansion was controlled, populations managed, resources allocated by wisdom rather than greed. Humanity has shattered this order in less than 3 centuries. A new voice joined the conversation, mechanical and precise. The speaker was one of the Forgeborn, a species that had replaced their biological bodies with mechanical ones eons ago. Its metal form reflected the chamber lights in patterns that hurt organic eyes to look at directly. "Analysis confirms the threat level," the Forgeborn stated. "Human expansion follows exponential curves that will result in total galactic saturation within 2,000 years. Their reproduction rates exceed sustainable parameters by 400%. Stakes' compound eyes glittered with reflected light. "The Zephyrian defeat was not luck. Our intelligence networks have confirmed that humans spent decades studying Zephyrian technology. They identified weaknesses that even the Zephyrians themselves did not know existed. Worse," added a representative from the ethereal communion, "a species of energy beings that barely maintained physical form. They are sharing their knowledge. Human scientists are working with rebel species to analyze Council technologies. They seek to find weaknesses in all of us." The chamber fell silent as the implication sank in. For millennia, the Council species had maintained control through superior technology, and the assumption that younger species would never understand their advanced systems. Humanity had shattered that assumption completely. "What do our spies report from Earth?" asked the Voidborn. Zitek accessed the collective memory of its species, drawing information from 1,000 different sources. "Earth's military production has increased by 3,000%. They are building ships using hybrid technologies, combining their own innovations with captured Council tech. Their colonies are being fortified. They are preparing for war." "Not just preparing," corrected the Forgeborn. "They are already fighting. Human special forces have been detected in 17 different systems, apparently gathering intelligence on Council species and their client states." The ethereal representative pulsed with angry energy. "They mock us. Humanity sends its primitive warriors to spy on civilizations that ruled the stars when their world was nothing but cooling rock. Those primitive warriors destroyed the Zephyrian Third Fleet," Zitek reminded the others. "Underestimating humanity has already cost us dearly." The discussion continued for hours as the representatives shared intelligence and debated responses. The humans were spreading like a plague across the galaxy, but they were also inspiring other species to rebellion. Dozens of worlds had declared independence from Council oversight. Trade routes were being disrupted. The careful balance of galactic civilization was falling apart. Finally, the Voidborn representative spoke the words they had all been thinking. "The human species must be eliminated, not conquered, not controlled, eliminated. Their very existence threatens the natural order. Agreed, said Zedek. But this cannot be another limited engagement like the Zephyrian response. Humanity has proven that they can defeat individual fleets through superior knowledge and preparation. We need overwhelming force. The Forgeborn projected a holographic display showing ship positions throughout the galaxy. The Purification Coalition can assemble 2,300 vessels within 6 months. Representatives from 97 different species have already pledged support. Target? Asked the Ethereal. Earth itself, Zedek replied. Destroy. Their homeworld and the human expansion will collapse. Without their central coordination, their colonies will fragment and can be dealt with individually. The Voidborn flickered with what might have been satisfaction. The weapons needed to crack their world are available: Starkiller missiles, planetary bombardment systems, atmospheric processors that can strip a world bare in hours. Overkill, observed the Forgeborn, but necessary. Humanity has shown that conventional military responses are insufficient. As the meeting concluded, each representative began making preparations for what would be the largest military operation in galactic history. The Purification Coalition would gather ships from across known space, armed with weapons that could turn stars into supernovas and planets into asteroid fields. Meanwhile, 60 light-years away, Captain Alex Turner sat in a cramped listening post hidden in the asteroid belt of the Kepler system. The human intelligence officer had been monitoring Klaxon communication networks for months, slowly piecing together fragments of intercepted transmissions. Alex had learned the Klaxon language during his years at the Xenolinguistics Academy on Luna. He knew that the insect-like aliens communicated through quantum-entangled thought networks that spanned interstellar distances. Breaking their encryption had taken 3 years, and the combined efforts of Earth's best computer scientists. The transmission he was receiving now made his blood run cold. The Coalition wasn't planning to conquer humanity or force them into submission. They were planning genocide on a scale that would make ancient Earth wars look like playground fights. Alex activated his emergency communicator, sending a priority signal back to Earth. The message would take 18 hours to reach the Sol system, but it carried information that could save or doom the human species. On Earth, Dr. Maya Rodriguez received Alex's intelligence report in her laboratory beneath the Swiss Alps. The xenobiologist had spent her career studying alien physiology and psychology, trying to understand what made each species unique. Now that knowledge would be put to its deadliest use. Maya read through the intercepts with growing horror and excitement. Horror at the scale of the coming attack, excitement at the possibilities it represented. The Coalition species were gathering, in one place, bringing their technologies together for the first time in galactic history. She activated her secure communicator and contacted General Chris Patterson at Terra Defense Command. The grizzled military veteran appeared on her screen within minutes, his face grim with the weight of defending humanity's homeworld. "Dr. Rodriguez," Chris said, "I've read Alex's report. 2,000 ships, weapons that can crack planets. We're looking at extinction here." Maya nodded. "But also opportunity, General. For the first time, all our potential enemies are working together. Their technologies will be integrated. Their species will be in close contact. That gives us possibilities we've never had before." Explain. Maya pulled up her research files, displays showing the biological and technological profiles of each Coalition species. "Every species has weaknesses, General. The Klaxons are a hive mind dependent on quantum entanglement networks. Disrupt those networks and they become helpless individuals. The Voidborn exist partially in subspace. Force them fully into normal space and they lose most of their abilities." "You're talking about biological warfare." "I'm talking about liberation," Maya corrected. "The Klaxons haven't experienced individual consciousness in thousands of years. The Voidborn have forgotten what physical existence feels like. We wouldn't be destroying them. We'd be freeing them from limitations their own evolution imposed." Chris was quiet for a long moment. "How?" Maya smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "We infiltrate their homeworlds while their fleets are massed for the attack on Earth. Small teams carrying genetic viruses and technological disruptors. We don't fight their ships, General. We fight their biology." And if it doesn't work? Maya looked out the window of her laboratory at the Swiss mountains, where human children were playing in the snow, unaware that their species stood on the edge of extinction. Then humanity dies fighting instead of dying on our knees, she said. But it will work, General. I've spent 20 years studying these species. I know their weaknesses better than they do themselves. Chris nodded slowly. What do you need? 6 teams of specialists, the best infiltration experts we have, and 6 months to prepare biological agents that will change the galaxy forever. As Maya began her preparations, the Coalition fleet continued to gather at rally points throughout the galaxy. Ships arrived daily, bringing weapons and warriors from dozens of different worlds. Admiral Kate Sullivan stood on the bridge of the UES Liberty, watching 50 alien warships drop out of hyperspace like falling stars. Each Zephyrian vessel was enormous, built from living crystal that pulsed with inner light. They moved through space with the grace of flying creatures, their hulls shaped like wings spread wide against the darkness. The human fleet looked tiny by comparison. 12 ships total, mostly destroyers and frigates that had been built in the shipyards of Mars and Europa. The Liberty herself was the biggest, a carrier that could hold 40 fighter craft, but even she seemed small next to the alien giants. Admiral, Lieutenant Commander Ryan Blake called from his station. The Zephyrian fleet commander is requesting immediate surrender. He says resistance will only make our punishment worse. Kate smiled, but there was no warmth in it. She had studied these aliens for years, ever since first contact. She knew their strengths and their weaknesses. More importantly, she knew they thought humans were primitive creatures who won battles through luck rather than skill. Open a channel, Kate ordered. Tell Admiral Kethvar that I would like to discuss terms, face to face as honorable warriors should. Ryan looked surprised. Admiral, are we actually going to surrender? Kate walked over to the tactical display, where the Zephyrian ships showed up as massive red dots surrounding the much smaller blue dots of the human fleet. Sometimes the best way to win a fight is to make your enemy think you've already lost. The response came quickly. Admiral Kethvar agreed to the meeting, his voice carrying the typical Zephyrian arrogance that Kate had learned to hate. He would transport aboard the Liberty with a small honor guard. He expected the human surrender documents to be ready for signing. While they waited, Kate called a secure meeting with her senior officers. Commander Pete Johnson, her chief engineer, was already working on something at a portable computer terminal. How long do you need? Kate asked him. Give me 20 minutes to finish the modifications, Pete replied without looking up from his work. The Liberty's communications array is almost ready. The other ships will need a few more minutes to sync their systems. Kate nodded and turned to her weapons officer. Lisa, I need you to keep their attention focused on our guns. Make them think we're planning some kind of desperate last stand. Commander Lisa Park grinned. I can do that. Should I target their command ship? Make it obvious, Kate said. I want them to see us charging weapons and aiming at their biggest ship. Let them think we're going to try some kind of suicide attack. The plan was simple in concept but deadly in execution. Kate had spent years studying captured Zephyrian technology. Their ships were marvels of engineering, powered by quantum resonance crystals that could generate enormous amounts of energy. The crystals were beautiful, efficient, and completely stable under normal conditions. But Kate had discovered something the Zephyrians themselves didn't know about their own technology. If you hit those crystals with exactly the right electromagnetic frequency, they became violently unstable. The Zephyrians had never encountered this problem because no species had ever figured out the precise frequency needed. Admiral Kethvar transported aboard the Liberty 20 minutes later. He was tall even for a Zephyrian, his crystal blue wings folded behind him like a cape. His honor guard consisted of 4 warriors in armor that looked like it was made from compressed starlight. Admiral Sullivan, Kethvar said, his voice carrying that musical quality all Zephyrians had. I must admit I am impressed by your courage in requesting this meeting. Most species simply surrender when they see our fleet. Kate gestured to the conference room. Please, Admiral, let us discuss this like civilized beings. The conference room had been prepared carefully. Refreshments suitable for Zephyrian physiology sat on the table, along with what appeared to be surrender documents. Kate played her part perfectly, acting like a defeated commander trying to negotiate the best terms possible for her people. The colony of New Texas has 60,000 human civilians, Kate said. I'm hoping we can arrange for their safe evacuation before your forces take control of the system. Kethavar waved a dismissive hand. The civilians will be relocated to appropriate reservations. The Galactic Council has plans for all human populations. You need not concern yourself with their fate. Kate kept her expression neutral, but inside she felt her anger growing. Reservations. Like humans were animals to be penned up and managed. What about my ships? She asked. My crews? Your vessels will be destroyed, Kethavar replied casually. Your crews will be processed according to council guidelines. Some may be suitable for labor assignments on mining worlds. Kate nodded as if accepting this fate. Meanwhile, her earpiece crackled with Pete's voice. Admiral, we're ready. All ships report modifications complete and synchronized. Through the conference room windows, Kate could see the Zephyrian fleet arranged in a perfect formation around the human ships. 50 crystal giants, each one capable of reducing a planet to molten rock. Their commanders probably thought this was going to be the easiest victory in their military careers. I have one last question, Kate said to Kethavar. Will you at least allow us to send a message to Earth? Let our families know what happened to us? Kethavar considered this. I suppose there is no harm in allowing a final communication. Your species will learn of your fate soon enough anyway. Kate activated her communicator. To Kethavar, it probably sounded like she was recording a message to her family. In reality, she was giving the attack order to her fleet. This is Admiral Sullivan to all human vessels, she said quietly. Execute Ghost Protocol. Fire on my mark. Kate looked across the table at Kethavar. His wings were relaxed, his posture confident. He had no idea that every human ship was now targeting his fleet with modified communications arrays instead of weapons. Admiral, Kate said, I want you to know that humanity doesn't negotiate with bullies. Kethavar's expression changed from confidence to confusion. What are you? Kate pressed a button on her communicator. Mark. The effect was immediate and devastating. 12 human ships fired simultaneously, but instead of missiles or energy beams, they sent out precisely focused electromagnetic pulses. The invisible waves hit the Zephyrian fleet like hammers striking crystal. The beautiful crystal hulls of the alien ships began to crack. At first, it was just tiny lines spreading across their surfaces. Then the cracks grew wider, deeper. The quantum resonance crystals inside the ship started to destabilize, their perfect harmony shattered by the electromagnetic interference. Kethavar jumped to his feet, his wings spreading wide in alarm. Through the conference room windows, he could see his flagship beginning to break apart. Crystal fragments drifted away from the hull like glittering snow. Impossible, he whispered. Our ships are invulnerable. Our crystals are perfect. Kate stood up slowly. Your crystals are perfect under normal conditions, but you never tested them against this specific frequency. We've been studying your technology for years, Admiral. We know things about it that you don't. One by one, the Zephyrian ships came apart. The quantum crystals inside them exploded in chains of blue-white light, tearing the vessels apart from within. In less than 5 minutes, the entire fleet was reduced to glittering debris floating in space. Kethavar stared in shock at the destruction of his force. His honor guard reached for their weapons, but Kate held up a hand. Your weapons won't work either, she said calmly. They use the same crystal technology as your ships. The electromagnetic pulse affected them too. Indeed, the Zephyrian warriors found their energy weapons dead and useless. Their armor, powered by microcrystals, had also failed. Kate activated the ship's transport system. You and your honor guard will be returned to escape pods. Your life support systems are crystal-free, so you'll be able to make it back to Zephyrian space. As the aliens were being transported away, Kethavar looked back at Kate. This changes nothing. The Council will send a larger fleet. They will bring species with different technologies. Kate nodded. Then we'll find different ways to beat them, too. That's what humans do, Admiral. We adapt, we learn, we overcome. After the Zephyrians were gone, Kate stood on her bridge looking at the debris field that had been an enemy fleet. Her crew cheered and celebrated, but Kate felt no joy in the victory. This had been necessary, but it was also just the beginning. Ryan. Blake approached her with a communication tablet. Admiral, we're receiving surrender requests from 3 Zephyrian outposts in nearby systems. News of the fleet's destruction is already spreading. Kate took the tablet and read the messages. Fear, she thought. The one thing that spread faster than light in the galaxy was fear. The Zephyrians had thought humans were primitive and weak. Now they knew better. Prepare a message for broadcast on all channels, Kate ordered. I want every species in the galaxy to hear this. The message was simple and direct. Admiral Kate Sullivan, representing the United Earth Space Command, announced that humanity would defend itself against any aggressor. The Zephyrian fleet had been destroyed not through superior firepower, but through human intelligence and determination. The last part of the message was directed specifically at the Galactic Council. We offered you peace and cooperation. You responded with threats and ultimatums. Consider this our counteroffer. Jake Morrison walked through the tall crystal halls of the Galactic Council building on Nexus Prime. The walls sparkled with blue and green lights that moved like water. He wore his best uniform, the one with all the medals from the Mars Wars and the Europa mining conflicts. His boots made soft sounds on the smooth floor as alien creatures turned to watch him pass. The human ambassador had never felt so small. Around him floated the Zephyrians with their see-through wings that caught the light like soap bubbles. Their bodies were tall and thin, almost like ghosts. The Klaxon creatures looked like giant bugs with too many arms and eyes that glowed red in the dim light. The Voidborn were the strangest of all, shifting in and out of sight like smoke, their forms never quite solid. Jake knew they were all watching him. He could feel their eyes, their sensors, their whatever they used to see boring into his back. The whispers followed him down the corridor. He caught words here and there in the common trade language. Plague species, stellar locusts, disease carriers, the names they called humans when they thought no one was listening. The great chamber, doors opened with a sound like wind chimes. Inside, the council sat in a circle around a floating platform where Jake would have to stand. The room was huge, bigger than any building on Earth. The ceiling disappeared into darkness above, and Jake wondered if it even had a ceiling at all. Counselor Veltar rose from his crystal seat. The Zephyrian was ancient, his wings scarred from centuries of life among the stars. When he spoke, his voice echoed through the chamber like thunder in a cave. Species designation human, catalog number 7834, Veltar said. You stand before this council to answer for your crimes against the natural order of the galaxy. Jake stepped onto the platform. It lifted him up so he could look the council members in their various eyes. He had practiced this moment for months, but his mouth still felt dry. Honored counselors, Jake said, humanity comes before you in peace. We seek only to understand the charges against us. A Klaxon counselor clicked its mandibles together, making a sound like breaking glass. Understand? Your species expands like a virus across the galaxy. In 200 years, you have infected over 300 worlds. We call it colonization, Jake replied. We build homes, farms, cities, we make barren worlds bloom with life. Without permission, hissed a void-born counselor, its form shifting between visible and invisible. Without regard for the ancient boundaries, without respect for the established order. Veltar spread his wings wide. The gesture meant authority among his people, Jake knew. Humanity has violated Galactic Decree 4045, excessive expansion without proper authorization. Your species reproduces too quickly, spreads too fast, takes too much. Jake felt anger rising in his chest, but he kept his voice calm. Our colonies are peaceful. We trade with other species. We share our technology. We help where we can. Help? The Klaxon counselor stood up, its 6 legs clicking on the chamber floor. You help by taking worlds that could house 1,000 different species. You help by breeding until every planet groans under the weight of your numbers. The balance must be maintained, Veltar continued. For 10,000 years the galaxy has known peace under Council guidance. Species know their place. They expand slowly, carefully, with wisdom. You humans rush forward like children playing with fire. Jake looked around the chamber. He saw fear in their alien faces, but something else too. Jealousy, maybe. Humanity had achieved in 2 centuries what some species took millennia to accomplish. They had gone from one world to hundreds, while others sat in council meetings and debated the proper way to ask permission. "What would you have us do?" Jake asked. Veltar's wings folded back. "Humanity will immediately cease all expansion activities. You will abandon half of your current colonies, returning them to council oversight. Your remaining worlds will accept council governors to ensure proper management. Your species will submit to population controls to prevent further uncontrolled growth." The chamber fell silent. Jake felt the weight of 300 worlds on his shoulders. 300 worlds where human children played in alien sunlight, where human farmers grew earth crops in alien soil, where human artists painted pictures of alien sunsets. "And if we refuse?" Jake asked, though he already knew the answer. New counselor rose from the shadows. Jake had never seen anything like it before. The creature was made of what looked like living metal, its surface reflecting the chamber lights in patterns that hurt to look at directly. "Refusal is not recommended," the metal being said. Its voice sounded like machines grinding together. "The council has methods of ensuring compliance. Species that cannot adapt to proper guidance often find themselves removed from the equation." Nodded slowly. He had expected this. The threats, the ultimatum, the barely hidden desire to see humanity brought low. But he had also come prepared. "I request 72 hours to deliver these terms to my government," Jake said. Veltar considered. "This, granted. But know this, human. The Council's patience is not infinite. Your species has grown too bold, too fast. The galaxy has room for many different forms of life, but not for species that consume everything they touch." Jake bowed slightly, the way his briefings had taught him. "I understand, honored counselor. Humanity will give your offer the consideration it deserves." As Jake left the chamber, he could hear them talking among themselves. The Zephyrians sang their words in harmonies that made the crystal walls vibrate. The klaxons clicked and buzzed, in rapid patterns. The Voidborn whispered in frequencies that made Jake's teeth ache. Walking back through the corridors, Jake passed alien diplomats from 100 different worlds. Some nodded respectfully, others turned away. A few made gestures that Jake was pretty sure were insults in their various cultures. On his ship, Jake activated the quantum communicator that would carry his message back to Earth. The signal would take 6 hours to reach home, bouncing through relay stations scattered across human space. President Lisa Carter appeared on the screen as a fuzzy hologram. She looked tired, Jake thought. The job of leading humanity among the stars was wearing on her. "Jake," she said, "I can see it in your face. It went as bad as we thought." "Worse," Jake replied. "They want us to give up half our worlds and accept their governors on the rest. They want to control how many children we can have." Lisa was quiet for a long moment. Behind her, Jake could see the lights of Geneva through the presidential office windows. Somewhere down there, people were living their lives, never knowing that their entire species was being judged by aliens who thought humans bred too fast and spread too far. "What's your recommendation?" Lisa asked. Jake looked out the viewport, at the stars. Each point of light might hold human families, human dreams, human futures. The council wanted to snuff out half of those lights and dim the rest. "Tell them no," Jake said. "Tell them humanity doesn't negotiate with bullies." Lisa smiled then, and Jake remembered why the people of Earth had chosen her to lead them to the stars. "I'll call an emergency session," she said. "But I think I know what they'll decide." Humanity didn't claw its way up from one small planet just to bow down to a bunch of scared aliens. The signal cut out, leaving Jake alone with the stars and the knowledge that everything was about to change.